Yeah, it's Chris, aka Vortex here, and I thought I'd do a video just streaming, basically for it's not actually streaming, I'm just recording this, but essentially just thinking aloud for a bit about anarchism actually. So I've always felt that I am an anarchist in politics, in political terms. I've lost faith definitely in the Labour Party as it exists in the UK, have done for a long while. And I guess I want to engage in anarchist discourse again, basically. I've been here before with wanting to think about anarchism on a deeper level, get more involved in theory and action, I guess. Not I guess, I shouldn't say I guess, it has to be direct. So if you're gonna, which is obviously a big principle within anarchism, if you're gonna, there are times when you have to take action, which is, I mean, obviously it's involved. Anarchism is engaged with the idea of action and theory and action together, fused into one. I wouldn't even say system, into one overarching framework, I guess. So people get scared by the word anarchism. Even a few people watching this will probably balk at the word anarchism. They'll just think Molotov cocktails, black bloc, people smashing buildings up, which is the darker side of direct action, to be sure. That does happen. Does exist. I'd say though, I think in general there are. I'm not a pacifist actually, to be honest. So I really my idea around my idea about this was solidified actually when I watched the Chomsky versus Foucault debate, which you can watch on YouTube, and it's very interesting. I mean, it's hard for me because my French is terrible, so it's just rely on subtitles. But for Foucault's translation, but I do like Chomsky's. There's a part in it where basically I think it's that we're doing it where they basically discuss if violence is ever justified in any way, shape, or form in regards to politics. And from what I recall, because it's been a while since I saw the actual video, Chomsky basically says, "Well, I'm not, I'm a complete pacifist. I do actually think that there are situations where violence can be necessary." Now, this can obviously be a slippery slope. I'm well aware of that. As I say, these words, and I know that violence can come in many forms as well. My general feeling though is that obviously it all comes back down to oppressed people, oppressed classes in society as a whole. And society is cultural in a lot of respects. I mean, there's societies in cities, there's societies in associations or this sort of thing. There's society as the large thing, which is the world, which is obviously society in some respects is actually just a construction. It's an invention of culture. We have society, or the idea of society is just basically a bunch of agreed laws that cultures agreed to as a whole, basically. So that could be smaller cultures, like I was saying, like small towns and villages, and also it could be the larger global society, if you will. And when it comes to those sorts of structures, it's more of just loose patchwork of ideas. So, obviously, in the contemporary world, we have the idea of the West and the East, which is actually more divided around at the minute. It depends on like, well, especially in terms of Europe, there's more division against Russia, obviously. I mean, the war's going on, and in terms of politically, we're back in a sort of similar Cold War situation, even though it's partly hotting up, obviously, in Ukraine. It's a proxy war situation, essentially. Um, I've already covered this a bit on my Ukraine war vlogs. I'm glad I'm actually talking about this again because I need to just think about it properly, and just really actually seriously stare into this camera and do some proper serious thinking, which is always difficult. I mean, it's always difficult to try and tackle these difficult issues and bring some sort of perspective on it. You engaging my intellect and my mind, and trying to help others basically to engage their intellect and minds over it. Because I mean, if you are, on some level an intellectual, whether it be public or private or whatever, just a person who's likes to engage your mind and think seriously about these issues, this is probably one of the most important issues that we are currently facing in the world at this time. And is there an easy answer to these questions? No, of course not. I'm a bit behind on everything that's going on in Ukraine at the minute. I've just had to tune out of it, to be honest, which is not great. I mean, it's not good. I'm not proud of that. I mean, but I was very close to the entire situation because I lived in Russia for 2 years, and I got out of there before everything heated up. I did see that there was a sort of tendency towards totalitarian information control in Russia, but I mean, there was a long, complicated reason why I left. I mean, there's a relationship involved and all sorts of other stuff, but that's by the by. Yeah. I mean, maybe one day I'll talk to my my partner of 4 years on this channel. Honestly, it'd be quite interesting, maybe possibly. She's already spoken to a lot of media around the world about, and she's much more on the ground with everything that's going on there because she's been involved in all the politics in Russia for a very long time. Actually, activist for. Well, I don't want to go into too many details. I don't want to. I almost feel paranoid, which is not good. Like, I don't like feeling paranoid about having to talk about somebody that I knew and loved actually for 4 years. That's a depressing thing, for sure. Where you get that sort of internalized paranoia that which isn't good. So yeah, we're not in a good situation, and I'm talking again. Like, I don't know how I'm relating anarchism to that situation, but I guess one of the key principles I'd say in anarchism is working together, and it's I think we need to, as East and West, work together on us at the left, who are the progressive political force in the world, have to. And I get really frustrated. Like, I had real frustrated moments there. So like, I've not been sleeping very well. I basically just started ranting to a good friend of mine, and just really just pessimistically just losing hope basically in humanity as a whole, just progressing and moving forward. And I don't want to lose that hope. I want to believe that the human race can make the world a better place. To just be succinct about it. One of the things I like about anarchism as structure is that it's about helping each other out and growing from the bottom up, which is always something that's appealed to me in terms of anarchism and theory and practice. It's not about a top-down command structure, which on the left and the right has been the problem for since the left and the right became concepts in the human imagination in terms of politics. That's the thing I really like about anarchism, like I said, as a political philosophy, is that it doesn't say, well, the right is right and the left is always right, like something like Stalin or something like that. Because orthodox Marxism, I think, is or like really orthodox forms of Marxism is just as bad as well, not just as bad. I mean, it's different because it it has the veneer of having a moral authority. But again, it's just another superstructure that gets imposed on the people, and the people are the people, and anarchism, I think, has to be a change in consciousness before it can become anything in society in reality. And as to whether I do actually believe in society, yes, I do. I mean, I believe that society comes from individuals helping each other mutually, mutual benefits. I think probably we are going to move. We're already in an age, I think, really, of hyper-capitalism in some respects. But then there's also these sort of emerging populism with. I think we've been in hyper-capitalism actually for quite a long time, to be honest. It's hard, maybe even accelerated. I mean, I've looked into like Nick Land and all these sort of theorists, and you know, there is something of the accelerationism in all this in the modern capitalist age, you know. I mean, I just thought real off all this stuff because, like, I've just read and listened to so much theory for so long. I just need to get it all out of my head, you know, and try and do something with it. You know, do something with it. That's the point. We have to try and transform and change the world for the better. And I think, well, part of that is obviously we have to be open about who we are. We have to be open about our place in the world. If you want class to become irrelevant, essentially, then that requires that we forget about class in terms of the mind. And class is actually just a social construct. It's not actually. There's actually no reality to it. There is no reality to class. It's like a phantom. It's like it's not actually real. But people conform to ideas of class. The classic example we have in the UK sometimes is when you have somebody with a working class background will put on like what we call a posh accent, which is a bizarre phenomenon, but it does happen. Like people, when they go up in perceived class, and obviously the Britain in itself is an interesting one in terms of this because the class is so ingrained into our culture, and it is only a cultural phenomenon. It's not. There isn't anything biological, or there's nothing programmed into us. It is basically programmed into us from birth. The idea of class and what that can mean. I'll dive into a little bit more of like how my own perception of my own class, even though it doesn't actually, it doesn't. Well, the class does exist. Let me just paraphrase. Class does exist still in the UK. It does exist. There is still. It's different to where it was probably 100 or so years ago, but there still is a perception of class. For me, my background is, I'd say, it's a mixture of working middle class. So I'd say I'm working class, but my parents were fairly well off. They were sort of aspiring working class people, they're boomers basically. And they're baby boomers, so they were the product of a welfare state actually in a lot of ways. But I'm not going to have a go at my parents. They've done very well for themselves through hard work. I'm not going to go into this video and just say, oh, all boomers this, because that's just part of the problem as well. So again, it becomes a class generational thing where we just and there were anarchists who are old. I mean, Noam Chomsky's the obvious example of that. And again, I couldn't just say, oh, old people just because it's just a silly generalization. But yeah, well, anyway, I was going off on a tangent there. But my parents basically working class, but I'm middle class. Like, if I'm going to be completely honest, my background economically, if you want to put it that way, is middle class, or I guess working middle class, but basically that's it really. But I struggle. I mean, I'm actually in quite a bit of debt at the minute. Now, I'm not even going to pretend that some of that isn't my fault. I need to read more into David Graeber actually because he has a lot of thoughts on debt and how it, we're all tied to debt in the current society. And debt and money, well, money in itself is actually essentially it's just a construct in this age that we live in now. I mean, money's always been a construct on some level. It's just, any trade system is, well, earlier trade systems were probably like of exchange were probably in a lot of ways more fair. Like if you're just like exchanging goods, you just exchange one thing for the other. Whereas the current system we're in now is basically the banking systems and everything is. So I'm gonna have to basically look into economics more to actually really properly answer this question. But the financial system in general, and this is where I got frustrated earlier on. I was just like, I hate Canary Wharf. I hate it. I've been in there a few times. It makes you sick. The place reeks of it. I hate it. I hate Canary Wharf so much. Like I've been here because I lived in London for a while. I don't actually live here now, but I'm just staying here. I'm just house sitting. But I've stayed in London, and I've been to Canary Wharf, and I just there's just something inside me that just does not like that environment because I know what's underneath it. You know, that's why I don't like financial centres like that because they are. You have to think about where the product of their wealth, these wealthy people who are bankers and financiers and people who work in the financial sector, they are basically. I mean, if you want to go into the stock market or whatever else, they are basically. Their only driving driver is profit. I mean, that's obviously the only thing that drives them. This is obviously went big in the 80s with Thatcherism and all that. And does that create a better world? I mean, for a few people, it's like, yeah. But then, I mean, if you've got too small of a gap between the rich and the poor, that's a terrible thing, really. And it doesn't create a better society. It just creates, it warps reality. It warps society. It creates the conditions for poverty and homelessness to exist. And if there's no social safety net, then people fall through the cracks. Like I myself have bipolar. Like I've got a mental health condition myself. I have struggled with a lot of issues, and I'm lucky because I'm middle class. Like I said, like in terms of my economic background, in the term. And I know I said classes shouldn't exist, but it does still. And that's true. Where was I? I lost my train of thought. I'm getting a bit tired. Anyway, I'll just leave it there. I think I'm going to try and think more about anarchism in theory. I'm going to read some anarchist thinkers, probably David Graeber's contemporary one. My main real background in anarchism in terms of theory is probably someone like Emma Goldman. I read some of her work a while back. I used to do a little bit of a blog called Fuse Left. I think it's still out there on the interwebs, on a WordPress blog somewhere. And also Buchanan, obviously I need to go to the sources of anarchist theory.